with some closing remarks. Please welcome to the stage Sam Roberts. Here you are.
Thanks, Tim. So, I'm here to give some closing remarks on what I hope has been a fascinating and eye-opening day, and you've got lots of actionable insights to take with you to put into practice when you go home. You may have noticed me at the front. I was tapping away trying to summarise briefly what everyone was saying during the day, so hopefully I've captured that correctly. And if they're not in the room, I guess it doesn't matter too much. So, a little bit of an intro first of all. For me, the underlying catalyst for and the critical importance of events like this is that we have a debt-based fiat monetary system that has never been so fragile. Its structure and design encourages and incentivizes high debt and currency debasement, plus larger and larger bailouts, which are indirectly paid for by the poor and the middle class. In time, this stretches and tears the fabric of society, and we don't have to look hard to see the effects of all that around us and on the news every day. Whilst fiat money can feel like a normal and natural part of our lives, like a fish swimming through water, in reality, we are living through a temporary blip since the gold standard collapsed 54 years ago. And crucially, particularly in the context of what we're talking about today, fiat money is a fragile foundation upon which to build a long-term future in both our personal but also business lives. However, we, in this room, and indeed this conference, can be optimistic. We have an emerging monetary system that gives us an extremely robust and anti-fragile foundation on which to build a better economy and society. It's no longer an academic theory. For companies wanting to survive and thrive, they can now move over to the better technology. They can now move over to the better monetary system. This is a choice. For some, Bitcoin will be a plan B. For others, they will want to make it a plan A as quickly as possible. Whichever route you and your businesses take, and whichever solutions are best for you, I hope that you will take some inspiration from what you've heard today. Bitcoin is more than just an inflation hedge. It is a better money that will ultimately touch every part of your businesses. Whether it's treasury asset, collateral for borrowing, used for payments from customers, used for payments to suppliers or to staff, or something else, Bitcoin is amazing monetary technology that can be used as a tool to better achieve our personal and corporate objectives. So today, so much information, and so I'm going to try and run through and draw out some of the highlights. That's my job for this slot. So we were welcomed and emceed by Tim Kotzman, host of the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. Thank you, Tim. Bradley Duke of Bitwise then explained how Bitcoin is becoming mainstream and how it changes everything. He talked through some of the corporate adoption over the past few years and how Strategy had shared their playbook. And one good statistic was 95% of Bitcoin is already owned and 95% of investable money doesn't own any Bitcoins yet. Thank you to Sam Callahan for moderating a panel on Bitcoin treasury companies. Some quotes here from those on the panel. So Eric Semler, strange that it took so long for companies to follow Strategy, and at some point he said, Bitcoin has saved us. Alex Lizette, if you're bullish on Bitcoin, then you should be bullish on treasury companies. And I think even more important, put ego to one side. to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible through bull or bear market. Eve was talking about how the game changer for the market was the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs, as it moved the thinking to the concept of the Bitcoin yield and everything around that that you would have caught earlier. And the quite interesting insight that Bitcoin treasury companies are based on an older model of hundreds of years ago of the Bank of England and the Banque de France, albeit with gold rather than Bitcoin. Adam Back was talking about how to be great, it's about the execution, and that Bitcoin treasury companies are the arbitrage between the fiat world and the new Bitcoin world. For my panel this morning, I was delighted to be joined by Jack, Julian and Max, and we highlighted, at least that was the intention, lots of practical uses that you could take away. We differentiated between store of value use in developed countries and medium of exchange for the emerging markets, using the Bitcoin network as a payment rail rather than just thinking of the asset itself. Not underestimating the hundreds of trillions of dollars as a very important use case for the store of value asset. And of course, how the central banks have been mowing and painting the lawn to convince us all that the grass isn't volatile. And the key action that I think was generally across the board was to get off zero. Eve of Toban explained how Bitcoin is the simplest asset in the world and gave some of the qualities of that. Described it as the wheel of the economy and is therefore a disruptive innovation. He explained the formula that determines the performance of Bitcoin treasury companies, which could then issue, potentially, far into the future, tokens as a medium of exchange. We'll wait and see what happens in practice. And that the only promise from the issue of treasury government bonds, essentially, is that they will print money to pay them back. We then had Alan Helm from Bitcoin for Corporations. He talked about what is the greatest risk? Is it adopting Bitcoin or is it ignoring Bitcoin? I think we know which way he was thinking. The definition of the safe harbor asset is changing, and companies now need to guard against monetary debasement and unstable macroeconomics. He talked about some of the important attributes that Bitcoin treasury companies need to have, and also some of the red flags to avoid. After lunch, we had Alex Pilar, moderator panel, on how Bitcoin can be positioned not as a fringe idea, but as a strategic asset. We heard from Stepan of Tracer and Brandon of Sovereign about how those conversations can happen productively inside traditional companies rather than sounding like you've gone a bit crazy. Some of the messages coming out of that panel was that often those company boards had not spent the time to understand Bitcoin, and it's completely different to what they're used to, or indeed what they've been paid to understand up to that point. And it is difficult to admit you were wrong. Plus, every company should have a Bitcoin strategy, whatever that Bitcoin strategy happens to be. We have Matt Cole, who walked through how ESG overreach, particularly from a US perspective, had worked against maximizing shareholder value. In the US, his view was that peak ESG is behind us, and with the rise of AI, the impact could be greater than the rise of the internet, and Bitcoin is needed for that. Less than 1% of companies have Bitcoin on balance sheet, and we're still so early, so there's still time to go all in, was I think his message. 5 to 10% is not enough. We then thoroughly enjoyed a wide-ranging and insightful fireside chat with the inspirational Michael Saylor, hosted by Nico. I'm not going to summarize that. If you weren't there, you need to have been there. But there was lots of brilliance and wisdom, and obviously backed by huge amounts of experience in the space. John Devine then rounded things off by explaining Bitcoin option markets and how they can be used to for companies to manage risk. So to wrap up, personally, and maybe you feel the same, I find and I've found that looking at the world through a Bitcoin lens changes the way you see the world. Somehow, well, it's a bit like a window being demisted or removing the kaleidoscope. Somehow, it forces you to think longer term and makes it easier to spot bad quality ideas. From a low base in the general population, this Bitcoin superpower that many in this room already have is gradually spreading across society and the economy. Therefore, by being in this room today, and indeed everyone at the conference over these few days, it means we're pioneers. We have a clear first mover advantage in our own particular industries, and we should make the most of that and accelerate. Build a Bitcoin solution alongside your existing solution. Test it. Adopt it when it's better. Stay nimble. Assume that financial markets and economic conditions can change quickly, so you may need that plan B in a hurry. There are risks to using Bitcoin, as there is for any new technology. But there are also risks to relying on the existing fragile fiat monetary system. Don't succumb to status quo bias. So, times have changed. The technology is exponentially more friendly to use. The regulations are catching up with reality. The career risk will flip at some point. And so a key business risk now is to ignore Bitcoin. So finally, I'd like to just say a couple of thank yous. So thank you to Matthias and Martin for organising this fantastic event. And also thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words today. And thank you to all of you that are attending for investing some of your precious time. I hope you make the contacts and get the inspiration that you need to continue on your own and your business's Bitcoin journey. So there are some drinks and further networking I think to have. So please enjoy that this evening and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.